name is Cindy Stern and I'm a research fellow at JBI. I will be your host today. We have an exciting webinar titled Rapid Living Evidence, Challenges and Opportunities with a Focus on COVID-19. So a very timely and relevant topic to unpack and discuss. We have not one but four speakers who will describe their experiences with conducting rapid living evidence syntheses for decision makers in Canada and beyond, including initiatives and methodological challenges encountered, as well as the patient-partner experience. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respects to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are the continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. We also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. So today's webinar is being held in support of World Evidence-Based Healthcare Day, which began in 2020 as a global platform to raise awareness of the need for better evidence to inform healthcare policy, practice and decision-making to improve health outcomes globally. The 2021 World EBHC Day campaign supports the infodemic management efforts of the World Health Organization by exploring the role of evidence in an infodemic, in particularly promoting access to trustworthy evidence-informed health information. So I have the absolute pleasure of introducing four phenomenal speakers today. I'm going to introduce them all together now. So the first will be Ms. Shannon Kelly. She has been actively involved with MAGIC and the CIHR Drug Safety and Effectiveness Network since 2011 and currently manages and works as a senior research methodologist in the Health Technology Assessment Unit of the Cardiovascular Research Methods Centre at the University of Ottawa Heart Institute. Associate Professor Andrea Tricco is a scientist and director of the Knowledge Synthesis team at the Li Ka-shing Knowledge Institute, St. Michael's Hospital, Unity Health Toronto. She is an associate professor at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health, University of Toronto, and co-director of the Queen's Collaboration for Healthcare Quality at JBI Centre of Excellence. Janet Curran is a professor in the School of Nursing at Dalhousie University, co-director of the Aligning Health Needs and Evidence for Transformative Change at JBI Centre of Excellence, and Quality and Patient Safety Applied Research Chair at IWK Health. And lastly, Ms. Linda Wilhelm has been living with rheumatoid arthritis for over 35 years and is a founding member of the Canadian Arthritis Patient Allowance, a national volunteer patient-driven organisation that has worked to improve the lives of people living with arthritis since 2002. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and I'm going to ask Shannon to share hers so we can get started.
Well, we're here today as a panel to talk to you about rapid living evidence and the challenges that we have encountered with our various initiatives during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I too will start with an acknowledgement of traditional land. I wish to acknowledge that my work location here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, is on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. And we recognize and honor that the Algonquins are the customary keepers of the land and this watershed. For transparency, I do have no relevant conflicts related to this presentation, except for a love of all things knowledge synthesis and evidence-based. And as we talked about in our objectives, we're here to describe our experiences conducting rapid living evidence reviews for decision makers in Canada and some beyond, with a focus on COVID-19. And we all seem to be using our COVID-19 molecule virus picture. And so I thought that I would stir it up today with a picture done by my colleague George Wells's grandson, who's age 5, of the COVID-19 virus for some interest. And today we'll be going over what is a rapid living evidence review, and we'll discuss some of the various initiatives that we are involved in. We'll talk about some of the methodological challenges we've encountered, including some important lessons learned that you may be able to take home some lessons with. And we're also very excited to have a patient partner with us today to talk about her experiences. So we can't start talking about rapid living evidence reviews without at least talking about what they are. So I'll introduce them. We consider a rapid living evidence review, or an RLE, as an expedited type of evidence synthesis, which gets continually updated and incorporates new relevant evidence as it becomes available. And this isn't a new concept. Some of you may have seen that there was a series done on living systematic reviews in the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology back in 2017. But the basic concept is that it involves a base systematic review. And if it's rapid, there's probably some tailoring of methods, such as a single reviewer or a limited number of databases. And this is then followed by sequential updates of this review. Now, during the pandemic, we all know that decision makers are under even greater pressure. We're all facing higher uncertainty in our decisions. There's rapidly emerging evidence every day, and there's an even greater need for trusted, up-to-date information. And during the pandemic, it's always now, or at least by the end of the day or the week. So the pressures are increasing, and this has highlighted some of the shortcomings of the current approaches to evidence synthesis. And potentially, all new evidence can be policy or practice changing. The methods for rapid living evidence reviews have evolved with this shift that we've encountered with the evidence ecosystem during the pandemic and infodemic. And we see things like assistive technology and artificial intelligence being used to support and supplement our continuous workflow and coordinated effort needed to support these type of reviews. We've also seen that larger journals with higher impact factors are publishing reviews like this, and not only publishing reviews like this, they are actually publishing the updates as well in a continuous evidence cycle. And this is something that I'm not sure if any of you have the experience with, but was definitely much more of a difficult task prior to the pandemic. So I'm also here to talk today specifically with my hat on for the Methods and Applications Group for Indirect Comparisons, or MAGIC, as Cindy so kindly introduced. And we are part of the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, Drug Safety and Effectiveness Network, or what we call DSEN, and we are funded by the CIHR as well. We are a unique assembly of approximately 42 internationally renowned health research methodologists and research scientists from different universities and research centers across Canada, with some collaborators internationally. And our goal is simply to use innovative knowledge synthesis methods to produce trusted, timely, unbiased, and clear evidence to inform policy decisions, specifically on post-market drug safety and effectiveness, with an additional goal for training, capacity building, and advancing the science. We have many success stories. We have now completed, I think we're at 61 research queries for our various stakeholders in the Drug Safety and Effectiveness Network. And we do these for our various provincial, national, and international knowledge users. In fact, today we just heard from the World Health Organization that two projects we did on type 1 and type 2 diabetes contributed to the listing of long-acting insulin analogs and SGLT2 inhibitors as part of the essential medicines list, which contributes to access for billions of people in low and middle income countries. So that's something we heard about today that we're pretty darn proud of. Our knowledge users within Canada include Health Canada, our National Public Health Agency, our different provinces and territories, as well as the Canadian Agency for Drugs and Technologies in Health. And there are a number of other associations and institutions that we work with, including the COVID End Evidence Network, the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, and the World Health Organization. Our leadership includes our nominated principal investigator, Dr. Andrea Tricco, who will be speaking directly after me, and some colleagues that some of you may know or have read in various methodological or other publications: Dr. Brian Hutton, Dr. George Wells, myself, obviously, Dr. David Mower, and Dr. Sharon Strauss. And we form the executive committee that guides MAGIC and our processes. Just quickly, we're part of a virtual network, which is right now headed through the CIHR. There's a coordinating office, various working and executive groups, and then there's actually 4 other centers in addition to ourselves that approach drug safety and effectiveness through various methods. And MAGIC on the right of the slide is one of those groups. We use, I won't get into it today, but we do use a structured and phased query approach to refine, conduct research, and answer these research queries. And we work with our knowledge users throughout the process and work with integrated knowledge translation to disseminate and make sure that our reports are fit for purpose. This is just a listing of all our different investigators, so I won't get into that today. You may see some familiar names. We work with these people on our queries, and they're absolutely fabulous. So when we get our slides, you can have a closer look. But what I really wanted to talk about was our DSEN MAGIC COVID-19 queries. To date, we have had, actually what I wanted to say is that to support Canadian decision makers during the early response to the pandemic, we quickly had to pivot our focus on the production of research queries to support pandemic answering of questions for our stakeholders. And this was occurring while in the early spring, our funders were trying to generate additional opportunities for other institutions, and MAGIC was actually able to safely pivot to support our knowledge users while they were occupied with trying to fund other folks in this evidence space. And so we currently have two queries that are in progress. One is an active surveillance query, which is focusing on trying to see how, at a population level, we're monitoring therapies for COVID-19, their effectiveness and safety. And another, we're looking at the characteristics of allogeneic mesenchymal stem cell therapies. I don't have a lot of time because I want to leave some for my speakers that are coming after me, but I really wanted to highlight a rapid review that was done early on in the pandemic for us. This was a result of a query that came through from both Health Canada and our public health agency in March of 2020, and we were tasked with finding ongoing or completed evidence for 47 different treatments for COVID-19, SARS, or MERS that were evaluated in human studies. And they asked for this in 3 weeks and for a variety of outcomes. So this living rapid scoping review has been kept living since and has been updated 5 times in the last 20 months. And the initial review that was done first located 25 studies that were ongoing. And as of the last update, there were over 1,000 studies included in this scoping review. The really neat part of this review was that we worked with partners at the University of Waterloo in computer science who helped us design a search artificial intelligence strategy that assisted us in finding efficiencies in our searching, which allows us to take on such a grand task. All of these research queries and their summaries are posted on our resource page. You can check our website. There's a specific query page, and also CIHR has a page with our research queries on it. I won't take up any more time. I'm happy to have shared our MAGIC team with you and our COVID experience, and I'll pass it over to Andrea so that she can start her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was fantastic. That was actually absolutely magical. So well done. Thank you. I will share my screen. Okay, excellent. So everyone can see my screen okay?
Great, Andrea.
Awesome, thank you. So great. So again, thank you so much, Shannon. That was really a really lovely summary of the MAGIC initiative. So I'm going to now speak a little bit about a bit of a broader initiative, but you'll see that the DSEN MAGIC initiative was really helpful for us to frame the next one I'm going to talk about. So this is the Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research Evidence Alliance, so the Spore Evidence Alliance. And so similar to DSEN MAGIC, we have also been conducting rapid reviews and other types of knowledge synthesis, as well as knowledge translation and guidelines for a variety of different knowledge users. And so one of the big differences between this initiative and MAGIC is that MAGIC is focused on drug safety and effectiveness, whereas the whereas the Spore Evidence Alliance is much broader, and we have much broader stakeholders as well. So I would also like to acknowledge the land on which our central coordinating office operates on. This land has been the traditional land of the Huron, Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. And it's home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. And we're incredibly grateful and humbled to have the opportunity to work on this land. I have no conflicts of interest otherwise to say that this is an area what I'm completely passionate about and very excited about. So that would be potentially in an academic conflict of interest. So talk a little bit about the Spore Evidence Alliance. So our national funding body released a document where they gathered feedback from all kinds of stakeholders and researchers across Canada. And they found that there were some gaps in the coordination of knowledge synthesis guidelines and knowledge translation at the national level. So in 2016, they released a funding opportunity, and we came together 175 individuals, and we included the JBI. So kudos to JBI with Dr. Zoe Jordan to be a member of this. We came together to form the Spore Evidence Alliance, and we were incredibly humbled and excited when we were the selected team to move forward with this. So our main purpose is the query services, again, broader than drug safety and effectiveness. So we accept all kinds of different topics. And if you check out our website, you'll see the variety of the things that we work on. We also try to focus on advancing the science and training the next generation, so providing a lot of capacity building. And again, as I mentioned, we do knowledge synthesis as well as providing support for guidelines and also knowledge translation activities. So we have a very broad, diverse membership. So we have about 348 members and counting. I think we had 2 new ones today, so this might be up to 350. And so you can kind of see the breakdown here. So about half of us are researchers, but it's great to see that, you know, we openly invite many different types of members. So we have decision makers, our patients and public partners, and our trainees. And we are open arms. We welcome everyone, and we are very inclusive, and we welcome everyone to join us. So we accept queries through an online form. And so we accept queries actually originating from patient partners, and I'll talk about that in a few slides, as well as different decision makers, so policymakers, healthcare providers. And every query has to be for a decision. So there has to be some decision-making functionality for us, or a purpose of that, for us to take it on. So people, decision makers, can submit their queries through our online form, or they can contact one of us or contact our central office and say they have a research question that they would like to be answered. And then we work together to refine the scope. and then we select a team across the country to help work with the decision maker to address the query. So we engage with our knowledge users, our decision makers throughout the entire research process. And then we also co-create knowledge products, tools, and dissemination activities which are tailored to their needs. So our goal was to respond to 100 queries. We have received 135 to date. So we have surpassed our goal, which is fantastic. And just want to note that in these queries, we have engaged almost 200 decision makers, 180 patient partners, and 95 trainees. So we have our patient partners become members of the research team, as well as our trainees, as well as our decision makers as much as possible. So we tailor their engagement according to their availability and interest. And just to show that it is pan-Canadian, we have teams across Canada working on these projects. Also to note that we have supported decision-making by 45 different organizations. So that takes a lot of time to build trust and relationships with different organizations, but again, speaks to the diversity and inclusivity of the initiative. And as I mentioned, we also have a stream where patient partners can submit their queries. And then we use a prioritization process with other decision makers to make sure that these projects will be very impactful. So this is something innovative where we actually accept topics from patient partners. And then if those topics are selected, the patient partner becomes a co-lead of the project. So they will lead the project with the research team, which is also something really exciting. So we've been doing a lot of rapid reviews for COVID. So we've done 37 completed or in progress. Definitely check out our website. And just to note that in the COVID timeframe, we have really had to speed things up, as Shannon was saying. So, you know, back in the day before the pandemic, a rapid review was done within maybe 2 to 3, sometimes 4 months if we were lucky. But now we're getting requests, you know, in as little as 5 to 10 business days. So it really doesn't give us a lot of time. All of our processes and procedures have to be set, and we have to be ready to go, you know, hit the ground running when these queries come in. Also wanted to note that we do work very closely with our patient partners. They are embedded in all of our activities. So they sit on all of our governance committees. They co-chair our governance committees. We co-develop policies with them. They also act as peer reviewers. They can submit research queries, as I had mentioned, and then also to say that we also provide them training. So we did provide a course, and I believe one of the leads of the course, Maureen Smith, I'm going to give a huge shout out to her because she's amazing and brilliant and fantastic. And so, and I'm not sure if Janet Gunderson is on the line as well, but just to give them a huge shout out that they actually led the course, and they told us researchers where to go and what to do, and we just showed up when they told us to. And this is how we trained 24 patient partners in rapid reviews, which we were incredibly excited. So we needed to train them to get them ready because we had these 5 to 10 day timelines during COVID. So this was specifically initiated to address the demand from our decision makers during COVID. And what we're trying to do as much as possible with the Spore Evidence Alliance is make sure that the patient voice is being heard. So how can we get that patient voice front and central to our decision makers so they don't lose sight of that perspective, because it's just so important and so impactful. And I know Linda will be speaking more about this. So then I just wanted to end, I don't have much time left, but just to say that we did publish a paper on rapid review methods and just saying about how incredibly challenging it has been during COVID. So many challenges are outlined in this paper. And so some of them would include things like, how can we closely involve our stakeholders? So for example, we want to include our patient partners, but it takes time to build relationships, and we have these very, very rapid turnarounds. So how do we do that properly? And we don't want to be tokenistic. So how can we actually do that? So part of that rapid review course that we mentioned was a potential solution to that. Also working with our clinical content expert colleagues, they're on the front line. So how can we call on them for their clinical content expertise, especially when we have such a high caseload of COVID? So that was quite challenging as well, and something that we hadn't experienced to this extent as during COVID. Also the urgency of requests, as we had said, finding all the relevant evidence was scattered across all kinds of websites and news press releases, and finding out policies in different countries was very challenging. And sharing the results widely, so trying to use preprint servers to get our publications out, because we have no time to wait for publication, and then updating our reviews on a continuous basis, which Janet will talk about more about the living component when our decision makers ask about that. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass it on, but just want to acknowledge the funding, say thank you to our principal investigators, including Dr. Janet Curran, who is here, and also amazing thanks to our team, who are just phenomenal individuals and my inspiration, and just I'm so privileged to work with these amazing people. So that's it for me. I will hand it to you, Janet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea, and Shannon for the wonderful introduction leading up to this presentation. As Andrea had mentioned, I am going to share with you our experience working with the Spore Evidence Alliance, which Andrea just described, and other partners to conduct a living synthesis on the public health implications of SARS-CoV-2 variants of concern. So I'm going to begin my presentation by acknowledging that I am in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq and the Maliseet people signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. And I have no conflicts of interest to declare. So Shannon spoke about some of the challenges of conducting rapid reviews, particularly during COVID. And so the project that I will be discussing actually builds on a large rapid review our team conducted earlier this year to synthesize the rapidly evolving complex body of literature related to the variants of concern and the impact that the variants of concern have on public health measures and health system arrangements. The work was completed in partnership with the Spore Evidence Alliance and with COVID-19 Canada. And this is a network specifically designed to support decision-making and is co-led by Drs. Jeremy Grimshaw, John Lavis, Nancy Stanteso, and Andrea Tricco. The network also benefits from significant leadership of Maureen Smith, whom Andrea mentioned. Maureen is a highly experienced citizen partner and has been integral to the work of COVID-19 Canada. The original query was for our original work was posed by the Alberta Health Services, and the Public Health Agency of Canada joined in on this work as it progressed further because of their interest in the body of literature to inform decision-making related to public health. Our interdisciplinary project team that completed this work included faculty and trainees from our JBI Center of Excellence, a library scientist, infectious disease experts who gave generously of their time while also providing support and care of patients in the front line. And we also had a number of patient partners participate in this work. We have been invited to talk about some of the experiences as it relates to the complexity of not only the literature, but also the experience with working across partnerships, working with our decision-making partners, but also our project team. And if you look on this slide at the complexity of both the partnerships, but also the project team, you can see right away that the challenges that are inherent in trying to bring this group together to contribute to designing the direction of the work. So as I mentioned, phase 1 of this work involved a rapid review examining the impact of variants of concern on public health measures and health systems arrangements. And the work involved many meetings of our policy partners as co-leads on all stages of the review. The final products, including a 1-page brief and a full study report, were submitted to Alberta Health Services in May of 2021. And shortly after that submission, the Public Health Agency of Canada expressed interest in continuing this work with a primary focus on public health measures. So just very quickly, the variants of concern as opposed to the broader SARS-CoV-2 virus is defined by those that have increased potential for transmission, presence of genomic mutations, and rapidly spread across countries or regions, leading to possible decrease of effectiveness of public health measures. And that's why the Public Health Agency of Canada was so concerned with focusing our review specifically on the variants of concern because of this increased transmissibility and how it might potentially impact public health measures. So our review was focused on these questions. What is the impact of the variants of concern on public health measures? And we specifically looked at modifying the approach to scheduling vaccines. We were interested in, or they were interested in, understanding the impact on infection prevention measures such as masking, hand washing, or physical distancing, as well as infection control measures such as quarantine or lockdowns and specific testing strategies. So the phase 2 work, as I mentioned, was specifically we specifically worked with the Public Health Agency of Canada. We had an additional partner join this funding arrangement, CoVarNet, which again is a Canadian network that is specifically doing work around the variants of concern, not just related to knowledge synthesis, but also a number of other key tasks, specifically looking at variants of concern. Our team, again, included the broad range of faculty from our JBI Center of Excellence, library scientists, disease experts, patient partners, and a full-time project coordinator. This work involved 2 components alternating in cycles, which involved a review of the literature as well as a jurisdictional scan. And we are and continue to complete this work in cycles. Every 3 weeks, we submit a report. And if in 1 3-week, we submit the report on an update on the systematic review or the living synthesis. And then 3 weeks later, we submit a report on the jurisdictional scan. So I just want to show you an example of what our outputs look like in terms of our rapid review component. So as mentioned, we have included patient partners in this work. And we struggled early in the project to try to identify a way to authentically include our patient partners in the review work. And the questions would have really been posed by our policy partners. And as we tried to sort through how patients might be involved in this or citizens might be involved in this, the review itself was in response to the policy partners. So our patient partners were really supporting us in terms of trying to develop our end key messages that might be relevant to the public or to patients. And so our report, each of our reports include emerging points of interest that have been identified by our project team, researchers and content experts, as well as patient partners. So this is an example of how we are structuring our report every 3 weeks in relation to the rapid syntheses. So they're structured according to the variants of concern. And then each of the sub-questions, for example, this screenshot shows you an example of the literature and our updates as it relates to potential vaccination rollout schedules and what the literature is indicating in relation to each of the specific variants of concern. So I should also let you know that these reports, each of these reports are published on the COVID End website, as well as the Spore Evidence Alliance website. So you can find those reports every 3 weeks on these sites. And the component 2 of the living synthesis is related to a jurisdictional scan. So one of the elements that the Public Health Agency of Canada felt was of interest to them was to understand how each of the provinces, each of the 13 Canadian provinces and territories were implementing public health measures. And so what we have been doing over the last 3 months is scanning each of the government websites in each of our province and territories to identify how policies and which policies public health policies are being implemented. And we are sharing those with the Public Health Agency of Canada, who also asked us to do a jurisdictional scan with Belgium and Germany as well. So that gives us an opportunity to compare other countries with how our various provinces are implementing public health measures. And like our systematic review component of this work, we are also sharing key findings in every report that come from the jurisdictional scan, but also the observations or key messages identified by our patient partners. I know this is very difficult to see on the small report, but if you go to the link that's provided in the screen, you'll be able to find each of these components. And so I've also in this screen capture given you an opportunity to see what our jurisdictional scan might look like. So in the first column, we have listed all of the abbreviations for our provinces, and then we tackled each of the questions related to, in this case, public health measures related to hand washing, any mask guidance that's being provided, any physical distance guidance changes, as well as, in this case, any setbacks or reinstatements of public health measures related to variants of concern. And again, I point out that each of these elements of the jurisdictional scan are specific to changes that may have been implemented in relation to variants of concern. So I'm sure that you've probably gleaned that this is a large piece of a large project with multiple stakeholders and multiple partners and multiple team members involved. And so what some of the lessons that we've learned, I think, so far in completing this work, and we will continue doing these cycles through until the end of this year in December. There are much value and some challenges with engaging patient partners in rapid living synthesis, particularly of such complex and evolving literature. Patient partners have been extremely helpful for us in terms of helping to frame key messages for the public and patient partners. And when we've shared those with the Public Health Agency of Canada, their comments have also been how important it was to have a patient partner perspective on this literature, and that perhaps that was something that they wouldn't necessarily be thinking about in the same way. So they really also highly valued having patient partners perspective. It's important to point out that our research questions were driven by our knowledge user partners, so that made it difficult for our patient partners to actually influence the question. I'd also point out that because of the volume of these cycles, these rapid cycles that are taking place, it is a huge burden to place on patient partners, and we've given them opportunities to participate as and when they can. I'm hoping Linda might also make some comments on perhaps some of the burden that's required in being involved in rapid reviews, and particularly when you have such diverse literature. Another important lesson learned for us was the value of regular communication with our knowledge users. And we have set up weekly meetings with our knowledge user partners, our policy partners, in which our patient partners are invited to come to these meetings as well. But this is to ensure that we continue to stay on track and deliver products that are important and useful for them in decision making. It's allowed us to streamline our formats, the formats of our reports so that they are useful for them. And it's an opportunity to discuss key messages and concerns from patient partners to inform public health messages. So it does create that opportunity to infuse the patient partners' perspectives that may inform how public health messages are shared. And finally, how important these partnerships have been. Andrea described the resources and support that the Spore Evidence Alliance has provided to both researchers as well as patient partners, and that's been invaluable. There have been opportunities through this work for training at a local level, but also at an international level. We are working with a fellow from the Ireland Evidence Syntheses network, and he has been extremely valuable in terms of the work that we're doing, and it's also been an opportunity for him to grow and learn about how to conduct rapid synthesis. We've had support with completing tasks such as screening, quality appraisal, for example, so these partnerships with JBI Center of Excellence, as well as with our maritime Spore support units. All of those partnerships have been key to helping us keeping on track, as well as support with keeping perspective and I think a sense of humor through this large volume of work. So I think I'll leave the time for Linda to close the discussion, but I just want to provide a thank you to the trainees, the faculty volunteers, and the patient partners for their many, many hours of work on this really important project.
Great. Thanks, Janet. I'm going to get Andrea to maybe share her screen. There we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about the patient experience during a global pandemic. It's been quite challenging. I have no conflict. The next slide. I'm president of a national volunteer-driven organization. We don't have any full-time employees. All our board members are people living with inflammatory arthritis. We were formed in 2002, and we provide advice to government, research entities, healthcare providers on policies that impact our health. I'm a patient partner with the Evidence Alliance Network, the Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research, involved from the very beginning in the grant application. I now sit on the steering committee and involved in many other different processes. I was on the Drug Safety and Effectiveness Steering Committee for 10 years when I stepped off to give some opportunities to other patient partners to get involved in some of the work. I am a current member of the Canadian Pain Task Force, which is a national task force struck by the federal government to look at chronic pain care across Canada. And I'm also on this Canadian Institute for Health Research Citizen Advisory Committee. So pretty involved in a number of different areas. Next slide. So I hope to talk a little bit about the real world living during a global pandemic with a serious chronic disease like rheumatoid arthritis, and then how to enable and empower patients to make healthcare decisions when we don't have the evidence we need to do that. Next slide. So it was a year, 2020 and now 2021, a year of increased fear and anxiety and so much uncertainty for our patient population. We knew and we hypothesized that many of us would have not a real good outcome if we contracted COVID-19. So we were isolated and we didn't go out of the house much. When we did, the anxiety levels skyrocketed. And then when the vaccine rollout started, we started to get a lot of mixed messaging. We were watching the United Kingdom come down with their recommendations, and their recommendations were that people with inflammatory arthritis, autoimmune conditions that were on immunosuppressive medications be a high priority for vaccination. And our National Advisory Committee on Immunization, because they didn't have the evidence they needed for our patient population, we were not involved in clinical trials. We're never involved in clinical trials for medications. They actually put a do not vaccinate recommendation and recommended against vaccination. So we quickly started approaching our specialists to try to figure out what are we going to do. We didn't have the information we needed to make vaccination decisions, and a national committee was telling us not to get vaccinated, and we were scared. I'll add to that the challenges we had to get access to our healthcare providers during the pandemic. They were busy. We had no more in-person visits. All the care went virtual. So we're emailing and trying to get in touch with them. And all of this just led to so much uncertainty, so much anxiety. And really, we had to try to figure out how to get some answers. Next slide. So our board members contacted our specialists. The Canadian Rheumatology Association put together a guideline, the Vaccine Guidelines Committee, and two of CAPA's board members sat on that committee. They took the grade course to be able to get involved and assess the evidence. And that way we had a frontline seat to some of the recommendations. And I sat in on some of those meetings as well. Then we communicated to NACI, the National Advisory Committee on Immunizations, about the vaccine policy and the do not vaccinate recommendation, and asking them how come the United Kingdom was recommending vaccination, but here we were waiting for our vaccines to get some kind of protection and get some kind of life back, and we were recommended against vaccine. And so we had a really good dialogue back and forth with the chair of the committee. I was shocked, and we sent her a letter, and that very evening she replied. And I think it was less than a week later where they modified their recommendation and said, that patients, this could be an exception for patients to be vaccinated even without the evidence, but they needed to talk to their healthcare provider and really be informed of the risk and the benefits. And then from that came the Evidence Alliance put together the rapid review training course for patients, which I took part in. I had been involved in rapid reviews with the Evidence Alliance, but I hadn't taken the training. And I have to say that it was very worthwhile. And Maureen Smith and Janet Gunderson did an incredible job, so worthwhile, and just really cemented, when you're doing something, you're kind of flying by the seat of the pants sometimes as a patient, and to have that training behind me and to support my decisions and participating in those reviews just meant a lot and really helped me out. And I've just since started another rapid review for the Evidence Alliance this week. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And again, I think our timeline is they want to have a report by the end of October. So it's very, very quick. And I think as our previous speakers have spoken to, it's kind of like a new world for us, but very exciting as well. Next slide. So from the work we did with the Canadian Rheumatology Association on their guidelines committee and looking at all the evidence, we developed a resource for patients, because during the time when all this uncertainty was, we were grabbing all the information we could get, and we put a resource on CAPA's website, and we put every update we had went out through our newsletter and social media, so that, because we were hearing from patients, and every time we put out information on vaccination for COVID-19, we would have 300-400 views within 2 or 3 days. Patients were really grabbing for this information and really wanted it. We worked with the Canadian Rheumatology Association to develop a decision aid based on the guidelines work, which we also disseminated through our newsletter, through social media, and on our website. And then I also was invited to join COVID End and communicate our patient priorities to that organization. And I'm still a member of COVID End. So it's just been an interesting year and a half that has been exciting, but also just a lot of work as well for patients. But for me, it's worthwhile if I can help other patients, help make them make their decisions. Next slide. Thank you for letting me talk about some of the work I've done, and I guess we'll go to question and answers.
So yes, thank you to all the 4 presenters for presenting today on World Evidence-Based Healthcare Day and for tackling a topic that essentially impacts us all. So we've received some few questions. So we've got a few minutes. I'll just check my time. Yeah, we've got a few minutes for questions. So I'll ask the panelists. I think you've got your videos on. So my first question is to Shannon. Could you talk a little bit about your experience with working with the AI? You mentioned that when you were doing that scoping review, you managed to use the AI for the searching process. Was that quite, an intimidating thing? Was it an easy thing to use?
Yeah, I will speak a little bit to the AI, and then I might actually pass it quickly over to Andrea, as she actually led the query that I was talking about for MAGIC. But I can talk generally that we've been doing some other research on AI processes as part of that are integrated into our systematic review software. And I can say that, as somebody who has been trained in rigor and process and, doing work in duplicate, it's a little bit of I guess, a mental hump to get over to start to try to depend on something outside of a human process. So definitely we've been trying to do some research to see, to actually document the impact and get some numbers around the types and volume of efficiencies we've created. Andrea, if you don't mind, I'll pass it right over to you to talk about specifically that query, because I know you worked really closely with Waterloo on that one.
Yeah, no, thank you, Shannon. And I really liked your answer. So thanks for that. I think studying the process and providing data on efficiencies is really important. So for that particular one, we've been working with our colleagues from University of Waterloo, and we actually hold a Canada Foundation for Innovation grant. And so we're trying to develop a tool in collaboration with our colleagues. So they have a tool, and we're developing the interface, and their tool has, I think, 7 US pending patents and is won international competition. So it's focused on the searching part of the review process. And it is a tool we're hoping to provide open access, free to everyone, or with a small nominal fee to keep it going. So hopefully, as we get into that and develop the interface, we'll be able to provide more information on it.
That's great. Thank you, Andrea. I've got another question from Maureen Smith. Do you think rapid reviews are here to stay and will replace systematic reviews in many cases? Andrea, do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I think they're here to stay. I'd love to hear from the others on the panel, but, we get so many requests from decision makers, and the number of systematic review requests has gone down substantially. Shannon, I see you're off mute. Do you want to add?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think that, it's something that's sort of come to the front of mind for me, especially because I did do my own master's work in the area of methodological developments and rapid reviews. And way back when it was just sort of, evolving into something, and there was a lot of pushback, and really you've seen this just massive uptake, and people who may have been weary before, I find, are much more open to it. because they're now encountering the types of decision making where they have no choice but to accept some concessions. So it's not that our decision makers don't want systematic reviews, and I don't think systematic reviews are never going to, I think systematic reviews are here, but I think there's definitely more acceptance of rapid reviews, and just more openness and talk about potentially the limitations, and just an acceptance that, sometimes you don't have time to wait for best. And so a rapid review is just what you need in the absence of having nothing else and no other decisions. So I would agree. I think they're here to stay. But I don't know, when, the pandemic maybe slows down, there's just going to be a new topic that'll be of interest, and maybe not as exciting or as evolving as quickly. But I know in our area, there's definitely not a slowdown of evidence generation that we're seeing. So I think there's going to be an ongoing need.
So they may not replace systematic reviews, but it will depend on the situation and the topic and the context. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got another question from Yvonne from Brazil. I think you've already touched on this, but perhaps a few of you might want to elaborate on this further. What strategies have been adopted to involve patient participation in rapid reviews during the pandemic?
Linda, did you want to speak? I'm putting you on the spot. Did you want to talk about how we've tried to engage with you and some of our patient partners?
Sure. I mean, when the pandemic started, and then there's all this evidence that we didn't have, the Evidence Alliance reached out, and just, they had a pool of patient partners that have been working with them since the beginning, and that's only grown. And we've tried to diversify and expand our patient partners and get more representation from different areas, different diversities, and it's just been when they started to get their reviews and the patient partners wanted to be involved, and that's when the training course came to be. And I think it's been a really positive experience from the patient partners that I've spoken with, and it's also given us a chance to get to know each other as well, which is, we don't often get that opportunity either.
That's excellent, thank you. And thanks again to our 4 presenters. I think we've just reached our time point here. So again, thank you to those presenters, and for those of you who are listening today, we encourage you to visit our website, JBI Global, for more information on a range of education and training programs. All of our webinars can be found on the JBI YouTube channel, so please make sure to have a look. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.